think a lot of times when we're thinking shelter and refuge, especially in relation to God, we think we can only go to God in refuge or shelter when we're in times of trouble or struggle. But when we look at our scriptures, it tells us that God is always our refuge. He is always our shelter. Welcome back. We're so glad that you're with us as we continue our reflections on Psalm 91. And as we've been going week by week, the situation seems to be changing. It's constantly fluid. What we talk about one week continues to change the next week. As we're facing this upcoming week, what are some things that have changed, some ways that it's impacted you, some things that have influenced you?
Well, here in Singapore, we were considered to be like almost on the front lines after China. We were the second highest number of cases in the first couple of weeks. And now we are no longer the front lines. It seemed like the front lines have dramatically shifted to the other side of the world and my home country of the United States. And you see the state of California declaring a state of emergency. So we definitely feel the impact. In Norway, the cases are increasing. So we're talking about the ends of the earth.
Absolutely.
Right? How about, I know your hearts are very close to Korea as well. How about what's happening there?
Definitely. As I hear more and more cases that are coming up in Korea, as there's more deaths, and especially as the community continues to try to figure out what to do, our prayers, our thoughts, just really our hearts go out to the people that are obviously not only suffering from the virus, but are trying to really deal with all of the circumstances surrounding it. And I think that's why it's even more kind of apt as we go through Psalm 91, and especially our verses today, that we really need to find that comfort and that hope in God. For me, as I read verses 9 and 10 specifically, they remind me of verses 1 and 2 actually. That image of God as our shelter, God as our refuge. And there's actually this Old Testament scholar who says that word refuge, it's a filter to which we should see the entire Psalter. And what he means by that is that in order for us to understand that human divine relationship, we have to understand what that word refuge means. That when it's used, that refuge it signifies a dependent relationship we have on God.
What does that mean, that dependency upon God? How would you characterize that?
Well, I think that it means that as believers, to be a believer means that we put our hope, our trust, that we seek after shelter and protection and refuge in God and not in other things. And as we do so, I think that's when we're putting our faith and our trust and our confidence in God. And I think a lot of times when we're thinking shelter and refuge, especially in relation to God, we think we can only go to God in refuge or shelter when we're in times of trouble or struggle.
Seems like that's the time we need it a lot.
It is.
At least from our perspective.
And I think we do that just naturally, especially when we do that. But when we look at our scriptures, it tells us that God is always our refuge. He is always our shelter. And it doesn't require a dire circumstances. It doesn't require a difficult situation for us to turn to God, independence in our relationship, to be in his refuge or his shadow, but that he always will be our refuge. He'll always be our protection.
Boy, how comforting is that? And I think as the psalmist segues from that refuge, that no evil will befall you, no plague will come near your tent. And we're thinking, praise God, this is the right time we need
Absolutely.
Psalm 91 and verse 10. But then you see the subsequent verses where, what does this look like? Really in our spiritual life, because we still see the reports. We hear the spread of the virus. We see other issues that are attached to the virus, like the economy, government, security, travel, all of that stuff. So I think he sends a force to help us.
God sends a force to help us. And what force is that? We'll find out on the next episode.
If you like this video, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, IBC Singapore. Turn on the notifications so you get updates whenever we upload new episodes. If you like this, share it with your family and friends and let us spread the hope around.